In my last video, it ended a little bit abruptly because I had noticed quite a bit of fuel leaking from the bottom of the bike. And what I had done was traced it back to the carburetor. So upon further inspection of the carburetor, what I suspect was happening was that the float was getting stuck, causing the float bowl to flood, and thereby causing the fuel to leak out the bottom of the float bowl. When a float gets stuck in a carburetor, that tends to tell me that I've got some gunk in the carburetor, and the carburetor either needs to be cleaned out or rebuilt. So that led me to looking up what it took to rebuild or replace a carburetor for the CM185 Twinstar. So I have two options. I could replace the carburetor for an aftermarket $20 carburetor, or spend about $12 to rebuild the one that I have. So in looking at the aftermarket carburetor route, I really wasn't impressed with what I was going to get from a $20 carburetor. It looked as if they were rather cheaply built, and there still need to be some modifications to the throttle cables to make them work. And in my opinion, it's better to stick with as much factory parts as possible. So I'm going with the rebuild route. I picked up this CM200 rebuild kit for, I believe, $12, which includes all the parts to rebuild the carburetor. You may notice that I said CM200 where I have a CM185. From what I can tell, the carburetors are the same. Now, I'm sure someone will tell me otherwise, but I could not tell the difference between the two kits. In fact, there only was one kit, so this is what I'm going with. Another thing that I had noticed while inspecting the fuel system was that the tank valve had a slight drip right in here along by the switch. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the tank valve as well while I've got the carbs out. You know what I love about little bikes? Everything is so simple. There's our fuel line. Just replace that later. Looks like I have to get the air box out to get to the carburetor. Looks like you have to take half the bike apart just to get the carbs out. What I've got to do now is remove the entire air box, and that means, from what I can tell, removing the battery to get to the bolts that hold the air box to the frame. Not exactly the most exciting video, I'm sure. My guess is that the airbox is hooked to some kind of bracket underneath the seat. There we go. Here's the airbox. It looks like it's held in by 1, 2, 3 bolts. Pop these out, I'll be able to get the airbox out, which will let the carburetor loose so I can remove the carburetor. That was a little harder than I thought it would be. Finally, that was way too difficult. Alright. There we go. One carburetor. Still leaks a little. Okay, so the carb's removed. I had a request to see if I could get a better shot on the bench when I'm working. So what I've done is I've changed the mount for my camera so you've got an overhead view of the bench. So bear with me here. So we're going to see how this new camera setup works out. So carb's removed. And it turns out I had misspoke earlier. I called this the throttle. It's actually the choke. The throttle comes in through the top here, and it's a little spring-loaded piece that basically opens and closes the carb from a valve in there with a spring-loaded setup. Very simple. I can see why this carb replacement would be $20. It's such a simple carb. So I'm going to go ahead and tear this down and then put in the new parts here, which come from this neat little keister kit. There's all the new parts in there. not too bad. Also, not too shabby there. At least it moves. That's good news. Looks like I might have had a leak on the bowl here. Maybe that's part of the problem. Okay, so I've got the carb mostly torn down, and I'm noticing some interesting things about this kit. Some of the parts match up with the factory carb parts, and some don't so much. So it's interesting because I went back and looked at my receipt, and this is supposed to be actually for a CM200 and a CM185, and this I can confirm is the factory Honda cane carb that was used on the bikes from the factory. So you'll notice some parts are similar, right? This guy's similar to that one, but then pieces like this aren't even close to this. So what I went ahead and did was just clean out all of the channels inside of the carb with some throttle body cleaner, some carb cleaner, and at least made sure that everything is cleaned out good. Generally the carb actually doesn't look like it's in bad shape. I didn't notice any gelling or clogging, which is normally what you see down in the bowl, is, you know, almost like a Vaseline buildup, an oil buildup. So that's good news. So I'm going to go ahead and do is just replace the parts that do match up properly with the new kit. So at least I've got some assurance that I've at least replaced some of the parts with something new. Then put it all back together and get it back in the bike. So pilot screw, getting that in there. Alright. Well, we're going to need to tune that, so I'll just leave it like there. Okay, that's that O-ring. I don't know where that goes at all. That looks good. That part's replaced. That's replaced. I don't know where this O-ring goes at all. There's no O-ring anywhere else. Yeah, well, maybe it'll run without it. At this point, no idea. Okay. Alright. Put the carb back on. I want to replace this valve. I can actually see it leaking right now. If I just push on this valve a little bit comes out. Anyway, fortunately I have to go the slow route. Drain the whole tank out. All that nice fuel I put in there. Hey, that's the way it goes. Go ahead and drain that. When it's dry, place the valve. Here we go. Okay. Alright, there's our choke. Throttle seems to be working. Looks like the new valve is working. The carb does not seem to be leaking. Choke works, throttle's working. And unfortunately I've got some bad news. It's unseasonably cold here in Ohio today, and unfortunately I have run out of heat and I've run out of battery in my camera, so I'm gonna have to call it early. But I'll pick this up soon, and in my next video I'll be putting this all back together, and hopefully we've got a strong running bike. And who knows, maybe the weather will cooperate and we'll get the bike out on the road. So, thanks again for watching. See you next time.